Going, Eric? All right, 2 thumbs up. Okay. Today we are in Luke's Gospel still. We've been there. And I've been talking about a lot of the difficult verses as we've been going along. And a couple times I think I've mentioned, can't we just get to the prodigal son? Well, guess what? Today we're at the prodigal son. And I'm not going to talk about him that much. So let's listen to the scripture. It's a long bit of scripture. We are in chapter 15, and we are going from verse 1 to 32. So this is really the 4, if you think of it as being 3 parables, but there's really 4 lost things in these 32 verses. So let's listen and learn, as they say. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. "Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Or what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost.' Just so I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me.' So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. While he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fattened calf and kill it. And let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command, yet you have never given me even a young goat, so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you were always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" I'm going to go first to the 2 boys, and kind of, you may remember about 6 months ago I preached over these same verses. So this is kind of to be continued, or part 2. The 2 boys, the father and the 2 sons. Now, as you may remember, I've told you before, this is a story of reconciliation. This is a great story. This is probably, to me, it is the greatest of the parables. And it may be one of the most valuable pieces of scripture that we have as far as understanding how great God's love is for us and how badly he wants to be reconciled with us. We talk about, in that sermon, I talked about the robe and the ring. The ring is very important, and the sandals. And all three of them are symbols of reconciliation and reestablishing the Son as Son. And the ring, the signet ring, means that the Son represents the Father. You see this ring, that stamp, that signet, that is me. That's my word, and I've just given it to my Son. So it's an important part of it. One of the things I did also talk about in that sermon, about the Father running to the Son, and how important that is, because in that culture, adult men did not run. And it's reminiscent of Abraham running, but it's a startling thing. Now, I didn't mention in that sermon, but I have mentioned when I preached over the prodigal son before, I've actually started off reading this and changing it, and listening to see what people's reactions are when I modified the story. And in that sermon that I had done that way, I modified it so that the son came back and approached the father, and the father basically gave him a stern scolding and said, "You go to the slaves' quarters, and we'll talk about this later." And that unfortunately is kind of our way of justice, our idea of justice. And it was a very effective sermon, actually. My wife cried about it, so either it was effective or it was terrible. I don't know, but she made her cry when I preached that sermon. But at any rate, I learned something this week, that the way I told that story was actually a rabbinic tradition prior to Jesus. That's the way the story was before Jesus changed it. So the reverse, the change of that story, the startling thing, is that Jesus made the Father run to the boy, embrace the boy, reestablish the boy, and bring him in to celebrate, and not to chastise and to admonish the child. Startling change. Really hit me when I learned that was the way the story was supposed to be, and Jesus changed it. The other thing I will point out before we move up to the woman with the coin and the sheep, one thing that we don't often think about, and I hadn't thought about until this week. We live in Iowa. We deal with pigs, and you can ask Clyde about the smell of pigs. Kind of hard to get rid of it, isn't it, Clyde? Yeah, maybe I should ask Donna about that. But this boy who is desolate now, doesn't surely have changed clothes, has come home from working the pigs. And that father not only ran to and embraced him, but trust me, if that boy spent any time at all with pigs, right, Clyde? You didn't have to get too close to him to realize he'd been hanging out with pigs. And that father still embraced him. The most disgusting, the most repugnant, the most unclean thing of all, the contamination of swine. And that Jewish father embraced that boy and kissed him. But that's thinking for a minute about how deep your God loves you and wants you back. But let's move on to the coin, because that's really what I want to talk about, the coin and the sheep. Not for the pigs. The lost coin is oftentimes described as being part of a bridal veil, and we don't really know if that's true or not. It makes a nice addition to the story that the coin is very important to this woman, and she has lost the coin. And one of the strange things about that is we read it, and it says she swept the house. Well, what's that mean? Why would you sweep the house looking for a coin? And that's one of the problems we have with reading this and not really knowing a lot about what's going on. The floor would have been, at best, in a peasantry type of a setting, a poor person setting, probably is a dirt floor. Might even be a floor that's covered with grass or thatch. You drop something on that floor, it's the size of a coin, it's probably lost. It's going to be very difficult to find it. And so she's sweeping the floor, hoping to catch a glint of the coin, hoping to see it, and she has to light a candle to be able to see because those homes were dark. There's not a lot of windows. You didn't have glass, for crying out loud. So you don't have a lot of light in the interior of these homes. And so it's bad visibility. This coin is lost and it's buried in, we want to look at it as the dirt and the thatch as a metaphor for sin. She's lost it in amongst all of this worldliness. And she's looking for this precious thing, this coin. Doesn't matter what denomination it is. She's a poor person, I would seem, and she is looking for this precious thing. And she's not going to give up. This is a metaphor for God. God doesn't stop looking for you amongst all that sin you generate. He's still sweeping side to side, trying to catch a glimpse of that goodness in you and bring you back home. Now let's talk about the sheep, which is what I really want to talk about the most. This story, these stories of these four lost, and we'll get at the very end, we'll bring back the very end of this, the verses at the end of this, but this follows the meal that he's had with the Pharisees and the scribes and whatnot, and where he's told them to go out and invite the people that can invite you back. And they're criticizing him for hanging out with sinners and all of that. So that's the setting of why these stories come up. So he's now with the tax collectors and sinners, and they've come to listen to him. The Pharisees and scribes are grumbling. And so he tells this story, first of all, about the sheep. Now, in that era, sheep and shepherds was a pretty common thing, and so they understood that. We read this today, and we see him leaving the 99 to go looking for the one, and we're stunned by that. And that sheep has been lost. Now, the thing about sheep getting lost is sheep can kind of get lost without really intending to get lost. Because what happens many times for a lot of animals, but it can also, it's a metaphor towards us, is, but okay, I'm a sheep and I'm grazing, and there's that looks like a really nice blade of grass, and there's a nice clump over there. And so I go there, and look, there's some nice grass over, and I go over there, and the next thing I know, I've gone from clump of grass to clump of grass, and now I'm way off in the high country or whatever, or the low country. Maybe low country is a better metaphor. What do you think here? It's the low country, because it's leading. But this is like us and these things that look great and look shiny and really are sin. And the next thing we know, we're off in the wilderness, and we don't know how we got there. And the worst thing is, all of a sudden, like I said to the kids, we were lost, and we didn't even know we were lost. And that is a true story. Most of my stories are true. So most don't. That was a joke. When I was in high school, my brother was in college, and he and his friends wanted to go out to the Black Hills hunting. And they needed somebody to help drive, so they invited me to come with them. So I went out to the Black Hills with my brother and his buddies, and one of them had a cabin out in the hills, and a nice big clearing. There's a large clearing of trees and dense forest around us, and you could see the hills out in the distance, and we're deer hunting. And so we all go out and we found our spots, and we're deer hunting in the hills is a stand. You're sitting there and waiting. Well, I'm a plains person. I grew up hunting deer where it's a 200-yard shot if you're lucky, and you can see for miles. And I'm sitting there, we're used to glassing the horizon, looking for deer off in a brush pile somewhere, and then sneaking up on them. And so I, as I would still today, got bored quite quickly with that. And I sat there as long as I could endure it, not seeing any deer. And finally I decided, well, I'm smarter than everybody else. This sitting and waiting doesn't really work that well. And I'm going to go and I'm going to circle around that clearing, because I'm out maybe a quarter of a mile from the clearing that I went into the trees. And I'm just going to circle this clearing. And when I think I'm all, when I get all the way around it, I'll just walk back in. And so I start circling, or at least I think I'm circling. And I'm walking, and I'm walking, and I'm walking, and I'm walking, and walking. And pretty soon I think, well, I must be all the way around that clearing, but I am. And so I start walking in towards what I perceive to be the center of it. And I walk, 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 and I walk for several miles. And I realized I'm lost in the Black Hills. And this is probably not a good place to be lost during hunting season. Not that there aren't other people lost. I didn't know I was lost for quite a while. I thought I was going to walk into that clearing and everything would be cool. And the most remarkable thing was all of a sudden I walked into that clearing halfway around. I had no idea how far I had run around, and I had no idea how I got so lucky as to be able to walk into that clearing on the opposite side from where I walked in, almost perfectly opposite. But that's the way life is. That's the way these sheep are. They don't know they're lost. They think they're doing great. And they wandered away. And we need God to come looking for us. But the thing was just like Herb's story of Providence, I had no idea that I think God was looking out for me. He made sure that luckily, I could have, if I'd have been very much off this way or that way at the beginning, I wouldn't have walked into that clearing. Even though it was a large clearing, it wouldn't have taken much degree of error to walk right past it, even a few feet away from it. I wouldn't have seen it through all those trees. So God is always with us, even when we do not know it and we don't appreciate it. And it took me a long time to appreciate that. But here's one of the things that we have is, this is a story written again to the sinners. We have to remember that there's sinners out there, we're all sinners, but there are lots of people out there that we need to be reaching out to. And the story of the sheep that strikes us as we read this is, why would you leave the 99 and go after the one? And that seems utterly foolish, that you would leave those, because guess what? Those 99 aren't going to stop grabbing grass and getting, the time you come back to get that one, now you've got that one lost sheep, now you've got 99 lost sheep. They've all wandered off into odd directions, and God help us. The thing we don't realize about this when we read this story, but I believe the people of Jesus' time realizes, that most of those sheep were kept in either city or family units. And you didn't just have your sheep there. You had your brother's sheep, your neighbor's sheep, your cousin's sheep. And you weren't the only shepherd. There might be 3 or 4 of you out there. And those guys are watching those sheep while you're out looking. They're there to take care of those sheep while you go look for that one that wandered away. And that's kind of when we go back to the story of Timothy, and Timothy's talking about his mercy and his grace, that Jesus came into the world to save the sinners. What God's done here is he's enlisted Paul, hasn't he, to go out and reach the sinners. But guess what? He's enlisted all of you, too. It's not just Paul. Each and every one of us' job is to go out and look for those sinners, to bring the sheep back to the fold. That is our mission. That's why God brought you to this faith. He didn't bring you to this faith for you. He brought you to this faith for all of us. He brought you to this faith to bring everyone, to help everyone. And I'll use one more illustration. This older brother, when we get to that story of the brothers, that older brother is so upset that his father has brought that sheep, that lost sheep, back to the herd and reestablished him without any scolding or any, isolation. You go work and you stay in the slave quarters. He's brought him back. He's reestablished him. He's so happy we're going to have a party. Oftentimes when we invite people to church, they come to church, and somebody in the pew, or one of the pews, might look over and say, why are they here? And without even thinking about it, without even realizing it, because we're all sinners and we're all human, we might give them a dirty look or make a snide comment, or just seem, even if we're going welcome, we might not seem genuine. It may seem forced. And that might be just enough to keep that person from coming back. I don't like to name names, but Scotty told me a story, and I wouldn't point out Scotty because I don't want to embarrass Scotty about telling me this story, but Scotty told no, somebody other than Scotty maybe. But anyway, he told me a story about somebody that he invited to church, and that person said, I'm too big a sinner to come to church. Can't come to church. Well, why does that person think they're too big a sinner? We're all sinners. Their concern is how the church is going to treat them. And it does remind me of a story. I like ag stories because I come from an ag background. When I was a kid, I remember one time trying to sort a cow out of a herd in the corral, having difficulty. And that's the way it is trying sometimes to bring sinners back to the fold. They'll fight you. You have to invite them more than once. You have to keep working at that. And I finally got the cow cut off from the herd, and I got her headed to the gate, and my cousin who's watching the gate, just before she gets there, slams the gate shut, and he says, "Just a minute, I think we should be doing it this way." And I was so upset, because I had worked so hard to get that cow out of that group and get her going the right way, where she needed to go, and somebody slammed the gate in her face. That's kind of what the older brother wants to do, isn't it? He wants to slam the gate in the face of his brother. Don't let my brother back in, because he wronged you, and he wronged me, and all of this, and there's no grace. Instead of thinking about that brother and thinking about, let us not slam those gates, let's be that father that runs to that boy, even though he reeks of pigs. Now that's a challenge. I'm not sure that any of us can do it. Clyde's come in my office a couple times smelling the pigs, and I'll tell you what, I'm not sure I want to give him a hug when he does. So, probably won't, Clyde. I might shake your hand, but then I'll have to go wash afterwards. But anyway, we need to remember that when somebody brings somebody to church, and we all need to be trying to bring people to church. We need to be bringing people to church gatherings, to events. We need to talk to them about Christ and how much God loves them, how much He wants to embrace them, even though they smell of pigs. But let's not be my cousin and that older brother and shut that gate because we don't think that, that's just not right, because they didn't earn it. I got some bad news for you. You didn't earn it either, nor did I. It's a gift that was given to us, and let us remember that it's a gift that was given to us not to hoard, but to share. So let's do that. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so very much for the message, the all so important message of the sheep and the coin and the boys, both of these brothers, and most of all, the illustration of the Father and His overwhelming and unending love for His children. Lord, let us seek to emulate and seek to model that love to this world. All of this we pray in your name. Amen.